So what I really liked about death is that they took a lot more sensitivity to it, like kind of characterizing when it's appropriate for GMs to use death or trigger a PC death in their game. And a lot of it was like, don't cheat, don't make it personal, give them a fair warning, make the encounter fair. And like I do resonate with all of that. I don't think it should be capricious or something that a DM does in anger, right? It should be to move the story forward, and it should be honestly a repercussion for the party taking an ill-advised action. I also really enjoyed that they had tips for dealing with TPKs and like how to initiate an adventure post death.
I didn't read that part. I didn't read any of the parts about death. Like I just sort of glanced over them really quick. So like I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Tips for the TPK was like, okay, well, this doesn't have to be the end of the campaign. Like they said, they had recommendations for if one player dies, you bring them back in at the same level and same rough starting equipment as everyone else. I've seen a bunch of ways that this is played at different tables versus different DMs. Personally, I like a bit of cosmetic damage if one of my party members is going to be revivified, right? Just to kind of give it a bit of permanence to the game. I've seen other stopgaps too. For the TPK, it was super interesting because I don't know if you guys have had to pick up after a TPK, but sometimes it's planned. Often it's not. Often it's due to a party combat imbalance, and I'm sure we can talk about encounter mechanics after this, but they were giving advice to how you could, move them forward from the pearly gates perspective, or they work their way back up from hell like a catabasis, or maybe that they're stuck in a prison from the enemy that they're fighting and they have to operate through that. I have sometimes started my adventure groups in a prison and they haven't acclimated well to that, but I think it is justifiable after death. It gives them something to shoot for, right? Getting back all their items and kind of revisiting their identity, what they value. Anyway, I thought it was super tasteful. I really enjoyed those sections. And I think that even GMs need the reminder that, the players are attached to these characters and that there have to be kind of certain rules we play by, just to make sure that feelings don't get hurt.
Yeah. And I like the whole concept of not every encounter is a lethal encounter. Some certainly are, but not all of them. And something that I have suggested to people for a very long time, because the Mines of Phandelver, that very first goblin encounter when the party's still, I think, level 1, has so many TPKs tied into it. And we puzzled over it in the Discord for a little while. I came up with what I think is my favorite solution, and one that I plan to implement the next time I'm running a home game where I TPK way too early against foes that are for sure not taking you captive, which is, the party dies. And then the day starts anew as if nothing had happened yet. You run back through that beginning sequence and you see a party that looks suspiciously similar to yours in construction. Dead at this goblin camp. The goblins only have the same amount of health that they did at the end of the combat encounter because they've just finished wiping this group out. It turns out that what you were seeing in that combat was a vision of the future.
I find death mechanics in games just so fascinating because, PCs are always the exception to the rule. Everyone else can't make death saves. They don't get revivified more often than not. They're just kind of buried and forgotten about. And I think that, when you have a TPK, it does give you a unique opportunity to contextualize why the PCs are the exception to the rule. And, if you're working with a group that's adverse to wanting to deal with those kind of bigger emotions around grief and finality, having something like, you're at a respawn point that you've never seen before is certainly a captivating starting point for a next subsequent game.
Thank God you all quick saved right before this encounter. We're all good.
Careful implementing that quick save feature, though. They're going to do it before every boss battle.
No, something's going to happen. You should have a quick save feature, and then something will happen, and somebody will do it, and then they'll be stuck in a death loop, and they'll have to reload an earlier save.
Oh, no!
But
all right, we're going back to level 3.
Yeah. I think it's because I usually like to play lighter games than a lot of people, but I generally don't go in for character death most of the time. I don't think character deaths have to be fair. I just think that they have to be part of communication and expectation. I think because I truly believe that kind of thing really should only happen to drive the story forward. And in that case, like, you need to like talk to a person and be like, yo, I'm thinking about killing your character, and I would like to talk to you about ways that we can continue you playing after I kill this character, perhaps even still with this character, just dead or zombified or something like that. But
how long in advance do you have to telegraph the killing of the character?
Probably at least one session in advance.
What if you don't know that you're going to kill them? What if it's just like an unfortunate series of rolls?
If it's an unfortunate series of rolls, then you bake some fudge and you change those numbers. I just don't think it's fun for players to die just by happenstance and just the whims of the dice like that. I've had that happen to me as a player before, and in the hands of an inexperienced and low EQ GM, that is not fun. And and especially if you're not like best friends with your players, like, you know them, but you don't like really know how they tick. Like, it can be kind of a gamble to try and do something like that. So I always try to, and that's probably something to just sort of discuss in session 0 and set sort of the precedent that, like, hey, this is like, yeah, I know we got magic and stuff like that, but this is actually going to be fairly realistic, and like death is like death. So